Have you been wondering how you can use OAuth 2 APIs like the YouTube API in Integromat? Keep watching to learn how to connect to the YouTube API and any other OAuth 2 API and to see how to change the thumbnail of a YouTube video with the YouTube API. So let's begin. So to connect to the YouTube API, we're going to make an HTTP request using the make an OAuth 2.0 request. So to do this, we have to create a Google Cloud project in order to get the credentials we need. So let's do that. Okay, so let's create our project. I'm going to code YouTube OAuth just to remember what it is. Okay, there we go. So now the next step is going to be to enable the YouTube Data API, the one we are going to use to upload the new thumbnail. So let's go ahead and do that. Just have to click on enable, and then we're going to be able to use it. So to do that, let's create our credentials. So what we need to do is first specify what type of data we'll be accessing. So in our case, it's going to be user data because I want to update my channel's thumbnail. So I'm going to give my app a name, and I will add a user support email. So in that case, it's going to be the email of the account. So next, what we have to choose is choose the scopes we want to add. So the scopes, it's basically the permissions we have. And if you want to know which scopes you need, so you have to go to the documentation, find the request you want to do. So in our case, it's we want to set a new thumbnail and then check. So here we have a choice between several scopes. One of the scopes we can use is YouTube upload. So let's add this one. Okay, great. So now that we have our scopes, what we are going to need to do is create our OAuth client ID. So since we are using it with Integromat, it's going to be a web application. And so what we are going to need now is to set the direct URI. So here I made a little mistake, as you can see. So now it's far down below. So okay, so let's set the URI. There we go. So the redirect URI, it's available in the Integromat documentation, and what it does is that once the user is done with giving the app the permissions to have access to a specific resource, then this is the URL that is going to be called by YouTube to get us back into Integromat. So now the last thing we need to do for this flow to work is that we have to add a test user. And so this app is still in testing mode, so not everyone can use it. So only the users you set will have access to this OAuth flow. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go to OAuth content screen and we're going to add test user. So I'm going to add one email address that's going to be able to access the app, and it's going to be the email address of the YouTube account I want to use. Okay, great. So there we go. We are done with that. So now we are going to be able to move on to the funny part, which is setting the OAuth flow. So before we actually go ahead and do it in Integromat, I think it can be useful to first take a look at the YouTube documentation to understand what we are about to do. So let's check it. So what we're going to do here is what's defined there. So we have a OAuth endpoint, and we are going to set the authorization parameters in order to be able to get the access token and the refresh token. So Integromat does handle some of those more technical stuff, such as the whole refresh and access token. So all we're going to have to do with Integromat is to set the so to do the first step, which is setting the authorization parameters, and this documentation will help you understand how to fill the different questions that you will be asked in Integromat. And so this video is not meant to be an explanation about APIs, because there will be a lot of stuff to cover. But if you want to take it a step further and you feel like you need to understand APIs a little bit more, what you can do is use Postman. Postman is a service that will allow you to make to test API with a graphic interface. So what you can do is just build your URL, and then you can see if it works and if it returns the intended result. So here what we want to get with this URL is we want to get the connection screen that will allow us to connect to the YouTube channel we want to use. So we can go ahead and build our request and see if it works. And here you notice that I'm adding some optional parameters, and it's because, well, I've done this before, and I've noticed that adding, for example, the access type, which is recommended but not required, is helpful, as well as adding the consent prompt parameter, which is again not even recommended, not even required, but I've noticed that it helps with the whole refresh and the world refresh token stuff. So I will recommend you add it as well. So now that we have our request, let's go ahead and copy it in another tab to see if we actually get the proper screen. Okay, great. So as you can see here, I have the sign up prompt, and this will allow me to connect using my using the email address that's attached to my YouTube account, as you can see, and then to be able to connect using the OAuth authentication method. So now that we have more insights into how this works, let's go back to Integromat and do it there. So what we're going to have to do is to click on add, so to add a new connection. So now we're going to choose the flow type, and so it's going to be authorization code, because as you can see in the documentation, what we're trying to get, the response type is code. So then we're going to set authorize URI, again the one that's specified in documentation, and then a token URI. So now, as we've done in Postman, we're going to set the scope we use to create, to enable the API. So in their case, it was the upload one. Then the client ID and the client secret we got when we created the credentials. And then finally, we can add our parameters, the access type parameter, and then the consent parameters. And we are done. We can go ahead and test our flow. Okay, so now I'm connected to my YouTube account, and I'm going to be able to change the thumbnail. So the method we're going to need to use is called thumbnail set. So we need to use this post request and then add the required parameters. So one of the parameters is, of course, the video ID. So the ID of the video we want to change. I'm also going to add the upload type parameter, and this one is not mentioned in documentation, but I've tried without it and didn't work. So you need to add it as well if you want this request to go through. The other thing we need to change is the body type, so it needs to be the raw body type, and the content type. The content type is going to be image JPEG because we're going to use JPEG image in the body of the request. So here's the image we are going to use. It's a random thumbnail I found on Google search, but as you can see, it's a JPEG file, so this is why I have to set the content type as image JPEG. And then what we're going to need to do is that for the request to be successful, the content has to be in a binary format. So we have to use the HTTP module called getAFile to download the file and transfer the file in a binary format. So this is why I'm adding this new module, and I have to switch the order of the module because, well, we have to read the file first and then transfer it into the request. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, and now we can run the entire scenario and see if it works. So let's do that. Okay, so as we can see, we have a 200 code, so it means that the request was successful. And if we go back to the YouTube Studio interface and look at the video, we can see that the thumbnail has changed with the thumbnail we chose earlier. And so this is just, well, the basic scenario, but then you could build so much more stuff. For example, one of the stuff I've done with this flow is to create some kind of YouTube thumbnail A/B test and to change the thumbnail depending on the number of views your video gets in the first hours it's uploaded. So let me know if you want a video specifically on that or on other use cases for either other OAuth APIs or the YouTube API. I will include a link below if you want to just copy my scenario and use it for yourself. And as always, if the video was helpful, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!